Glad to see you. Thanks for watching. Subscribing is the best way to say thank you and to not miss new episodes. And now, let's start. By the time 2006 rolled around, subtle warning signs were already surfacing in the U.S. economy. Yet most people remained unaware or chose to look the other way. The seeds of the financial crisis that would erupt in 2008 had already been sown. At the heart of the looming disaster was a decade of unchecked speculation involving complex financial instruments. Chief among these were mortgage-backed securities, commonly known as MBS, which played a pivotal role in the economic meltdown. These securities were created when banks issued home loans and then sold them. Typically, after holding a mortgage for a couple of years, a bank would sell it to an entity like Fannie Mae, which in turn freed up capital to issue more loans. Fannie Mae would then pool together numerous mortgages and package them for resale on what's known as the secondary market. These bundles were the MBS, collections of mortgages grouped into a single financial product. The overall value of an MBS was tied directly to the quality and performance of the mortgages within it. Because banks could quickly offload loans to Fannie Mae, they became more inclined to approve high-risk borrowers. Many of these loans came with variable rates or interest-only payment structures. As the Federal Reserve increased interest rates between 2004 and 2006, monthly payments for many homeowners began to rise sharply. Soon, countless borrowers found themselves unable to make payments and faced foreclosure. When mortgage defaults surged past a critical point, the inflated housing market crumbled, sending shockwaves through the global financial system. Part 1, Asheville, North Carolina. Chapter 1, December 11, 2006. It was just another dull corporate holiday event. For the third consecutive year, I found myself at Thompson & Associates' annual Christmas celebration, a company that dealt in investments and brokerage. The food was excellent, the drinks plentiful, but the small talk at our table couldn't have been more tedious. My name is Tom Mayfield. I didn't work for TNA myself. I was there as my wife Michelle's guest. Michelle, though most people affectionately call her Mickey, had been my wife for 3 years and was one of TNA's highest-performing sales reps. So, Mickey, when are you going to start steering your clients toward the new MBS options? Asked Bob Ford, one of her co-workers. I'm not putting any money into something I wouldn't personally invest in. And I'm definitely not going to recommend it to my clients either, Mickey responded. They're missing out on a gold mine, said Mark Henry, her supervisor. You need to act fast. This gravy train won't last forever. Oh, please, scoffed Leon Goldberg, the firm's top salesperson. The MBS market is like a never-ending jackpot. I listened to the discussion half-heartedly, but couldn't help wondering why Mickey wasn't jumping on board if these investments were as profitable as they claimed. I had no clue what an MBS even was, and I wasn't about to expose my ignorance in front of Mickey's colleagues. So I kept quiet, deciding to bring it up later in private. Let me be clear. When it comes to money management and investment strategy, Mickey knows her stuff better than anyone I know, including her college professors. As for me, I'm practically financially illiterate and have always left those decisions in her capable hands. That night, once we were back home, I asked her, what exactly are these MBS things? And if they're so profitable, why haven't we invested in them? They're called mortgage-backed securities, she explained, and I've got a really bad feeling about them. Something's not right. Then why are Mark and Leon so high on them? I asked. They're blinded by the returns. They don't want to believe that something could go wrong, she said. What do you think is going to happen? In my opinion, these MBS products are a ticking time bomb. Once it goes off, the housing market is going to implode. Are we talking about something small or something serious? If I'm right, Mickey said, it could take down the entire U.S. economy. I took a moment to process what she had said. I trusted her judgment far more than the overconfident claims of her coworkers. But then another worry crept in. I was employed as a project manager for a home building company down in Jacksonville, Florida, and we were busy putting up homes throughout the region. How would all this affect my job? I asked. I think you should consider switching industries, she said. I'm planning to do the same. Once the market collapses, TNA is going to be in real trouble, and I don't plan on sticking around to watch it happen. She couldn't pinpoint when the collapse would happen, maybe 2 or 3 years down the road or possibly even sooner. But I took her concerns seriously. I didn't wait around. I updated my resume and sent it to a recruiting agency. For 9 months, I heard nothing back. Then, in October 2007, Bill Ferguson, a headhunter I'd hired, finally got in touch with some news. "How would you feel about relocating to Asheville, North Carolina?" he asked. "Not sure," I replied. "I'd need to talk it over with my wife." "What kind of position is it?" "It's with a company called Standard Auto Services Corporation," he said. "They build and sell auto service centers to franchisees. They're hiring project managers to supervise the construction process. The starting salary's about $2,000 less than what you're currently earning, but there's potential for advancement." "That sounds promising," I said, "but how much travel is involved?" "They're currently working in North Carolina, Tennessee, and Virginia. So yeah, there will be a fair bit of travel." "How stable is this company?" "The economy's looking shaky. Can they weather a downturn?" That was exactly the kind of question Mickey had taught me to ask. She believed construction-related roles could be volatile if a recession hit. "Their reasoning is this," Bill explained. "If the economy tanks and people stop buying new cars, they'll still need affordable places to fix the ones they've got. These service centers will be in high demand." I told Bill I'd talk to Mickey and get back to him in the morning. That evening, when I walked in the door, the aroma of fried chicken greeted me. Mickey was in the kitchen cooking dinner, the same fried chicken she'd made for me the first time we ate together. It was her grandmother's recipe, and it turned out to be the best chicken I'd ever had. It quickly became my favorite dish. We finished dinner and cleaned up the kitchen before I told Mickey about Bill's call and the job opportunity in Asheville. I expected her to push back when I mentioned we'd have to relocate to Asheville, North Carolina if I accepted the position. "Asheville has a good reputation," Mickey replied. "When would you need to begin?" "They want me to start on the 1st, I told her. "That only gives us about 3 weeks, she said. "I'll have to inform TNA and I'll need time to reach out to all my clients about my departure. That alone will take longer than 3 weeks. "So, you're okay with the idea of moving to Asheville?" I asked. "As I've said, trouble's coming to TNA, it won't survive, and you'd lose your job there eventually. This new opportunity sounds promising, but I want to check out the company first." She spent a couple of hours that evening researching SASC online. After digging into their background, she told me the company appeared strong and well-structured. They had a solid business strategy, she said, and encouraged me to take the offer. Chapter 2, October 2007. In the final week of October, I relocated to Asheville and secured a 2-bedroom apartment for us. Mickey stayed behind in Jacksonville to handle the house sale and inform her clients she was leaving TNA. She gave her clients the option to either stick with another broker at TNA or move their business elsewhere. She also began applying to firms in the Asheville area and eventually landed a position with a new brokerage that had just set up shop there. Even though the real estate market had been hot just a few months before, it still took a month to sell our house, and only after we dropped the asking price. Still, we managed to come out ahead financially. By the time Mickey joined me in Asheville, I was working between 2 SASC service centers in western North Carolina, which allowed me to come home every night. Over the next 4 months, we enjoyed exploring our new surroundings and adjusting to life in a different city. In the spring of 2008, we purchased a foreclosed home. It was the first property built in a new housing development located 11 miles north of Asheville, near the west side of the French Broad River. Perched on a hill along Chandler Road, the home overlooked the water. It was the only house completed before the developers went under. The structure was a spacious wooden colonial-style home with a finished basement, 4 bedrooms, 3.5 bathrooms, and a garage for 2 cars. We fell in love with it and believed it would be ideal for starting a family. However, the quiet took some getting used to since our nearest neighbors were quite a distance away. Mickey's new role wasn't much different from her work back at TNA, and she quickly built up her clientele again. A few of her past clients even sought her out in Asheville. In January, both of the projects I was overseeing wrapped up, and I picked up 2 more, this time located in Tennessee. That meant spending most of the week out of town, usually 3 or 4 nights away from home. It was tough, but we agreed it was a temporary situation until the housing market rebounded and I could return to the home building industry. After 4 years with SASC, things were going well for me professionally. The company was growing, and I found myself on the road more frequently. Mickey, however, never voiced any complaints. While I traveled across the Carolinas and Tennessee, she was using her financial expertise to plan for our future, starting a family and retiring early. Chapter 3, March 2012. When I returned home for a long weekend after being away for 3 weeks, Mickey met me at the door with a serious look. "Tom," she said, "I've been thinking a lot about starting a family, but we're not quite where I want to be financially." She went on to explain that she had identified a new investment opportunity that could put us in a much better position within 2 years. "If it works," she said, "we can finally start our family and I'd be able to stay home with the kids." "You know I'm clueless when it comes to investing," I replied. "I build things. But I trust you when it comes to handling our money. So, what's this big idea and how sure are you about it?" "I'd rather wait to explain until later," she said. "I met a consultant at a seminar a few months ago. We talked through the concept over several weeks. He has experience with this type of investment and thinks it has real potential. His name is Dave Nesbitt, and he's coming by tonight so we can all talk it through." "Whose idea is this?" "His or yours?" I asked. "It's mine," she said. "I just shared it with Dave to get his take, and he ended up loving it. He believes we can actually pull this off, and we could more than triple our investment." "So you're thinking of putting most of our savings into this?" I asked. "Are you really confident it's worth the risk?" "I am," she said. "Let's wait for Dave to arrive. Then I'll go over everything, the plan, the numbers, and what we'll need to invest to make it happen." I heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway and stepped outside to greet Nesbitt, who pulled up in a sleek, red 2010 Corvette. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of envy. Corvettes had always appealed to me. But given the nature of my work, I stuck with my reliable four-wheel drive Ford F-150. As we shook hands, I quickly assessed him, and I could tell he was doing the same. Nesbitt stood at about 6'2", same as me. His hair was darker and cut shorter than mine, and a neat mustache framed his upper lip. He smiled easily, and I picked up on a faint accent I couldn't quite place. Once we stepped inside, I asked where he was originally from. "I'm from Pennsylvania," he said, "but I spent 10 years living in Cincinnati before I moved down here." "Reds fan or Phillies?" I asked with a grin. "Pirates," he replied. By the time Nesbitt and I entered the living room, Mickey was emerging from the kitchen, balancing a tray with 2 beers, a glass of white wine, and some snacks. "Well, looks like you two have met already," Mickey said as she set the tray down. "We can jump right in." Then she turned to me and added, "I haven't filled Tom in yet, so I'll explain everything now." She started her story, saying that about a month ago she was working with one of her clients, who happened to own a natural gas drilling company based in Oklahoma. He mentioned that one of his competitors had plans to expand into North Carolina. Apparently, the state legislature had just approved fracking operations there, and companies were expected to begin drilling next year. According to him, that competitor would soon begin approaching landowners to strike deals for drilling access. That conversation had sparked an idea for Mickey. She explained that companies can't legally drill or profit from underground resources like natural gas unless they either own or lease the mineral rights to the land. After digging into the laws herself, she discovered something interesting. If we could beat the drilling company to the punch and buy those mineral rights first, they'd have no choice but to negotiate with us. It could be a highly profitable opportunity. Just as Mickey finished, Nesbitt chimed in. "When she shared her idea with me," he said, "I did my own research, and she's absolutely right. We don't need to buy the land itself, just the rights beneath it. If we move quickly, we could easily triple our initial investment." I had always trusted Mickey's instincts, but I had no personal reason to trust Nesbitt yet. The whole thing felt like a gamble. "Why would any property owner sell their mineral rights to us?" I asked, skeptical. "That's the clever part," Nesbitt said. "In many cases, the people living on the land don't actually own what's underneath it. Those rights were often sold off decades ago. I combed through public land records and found that one family owns the majority of the mineral rights in the area we're targeting." He went on to say that he'd already contacted the head of that family, a man named Daniel Owen. Owen had expressed interest in selling as long as the price was right. Nesbitt explained that Owen's great-grandfather had retained the underground rights when they sold off the land generations ago, hoping oil might be discovered one day. That had never happened. I started to get the feeling that Mickey and Nesbitt were committed to this plan whether I was on board or not. Still, Mickey's judgment had never steered me wrong before, so I told her I'd support whatever she decided. "How much are we talking?" I asked. "We're looking at a $500,000 investment," she said. "Dave's in too." "That's a serious amount of cash," I said. "You're sure this is worth it?" Mickey didn't hesitate. "It's too good of an opportunity to let pass," she said. Nesbitt nodded in agreement. "What are the next steps?" I asked. "We need to formalize our partnership, and I'll need your power of attorney so I can act on your behalf when you're away," she said, handing me a thick stack of documents. I must have signed at least 7 different forms. After Nesbitt left, Mickey pulled me into the bedroom and we ended up in bed. When Monday rolled around, I headed back to Tennessee. Despite everything, I couldn't shake the unease I felt about this whole deal with Nesbitt. Maybe it was the money we were risking, or maybe it was just that I didn't fully trust him. Probably both. Something else gnawed at me, too. Even though the weekend with Mickey had been incredible, she never once told me she loved me. That hadn't always been the case. In the past, when we made love, she'd said it often. Chapter 4, April 2012. 3 weeks later, when I returned home for the weekend, I expected a warm welcome. Instead, Mickey greeted me with a kiss on the cheek and a brief question about my job, then quickly lost interest in my response. When I brought up the status of our business plan, I assumed she'd be eager to talk about it, but that wasn't the case. "It's progressing just about how we figured it would," she said flatly, offering nothing more. Throughout the weekend, Mickey felt emotionally withdrawn. When I tried to ask her what was bothering her, she responded with irritation. "It's not a big deal. I'm just worn out, and you being gone all the time doesn't exactly help." Was she expressing that she missed me? Or was she subtly accusing me of being the cause of her unhappiness? I couldn't tell. The ambiguity left me confused. There was no affection between us that weekend. For the first time in our marriage, I actually looked forward to heading back to Tennessee on Monday. During the first week I was away, her tone on the phone had been distant. She did warm up slightly after that, though she kept insisting everything was fine. Still, her behavior left me uneasy about where we stood. I began calling home at unpredictable hours when I knew she'd be there. She answered every time. That helped calm my nerves a bit, but her tone during our conversations didn't reassure me. She never directly told me she was bothered by my calls, but I often sensed that they annoyed her. Convinced that the distance was to blame, I made a conscious effort to lift her spirits during the weekends I came home. But nothing I did seemed to change anything. Weeks turned into months, and Mickey's demeanor stayed exactly the same. Chapter 5, January 2013. It was mid-January, and I was preparing to drive back home for a long weekend. Before leaving, I called Mickey to let her know when I'd be on the road. This time, she actually seemed pleased to hear from me. We chatted casually for a bit before she mentioned, "Just a heads up, it snowed about 3 inches last night. It's not snowing anymore, but it's been overcast all day, and the temperature hasn't climbed above freezing. A lot of the roads are still icy, so be careful." I was taken aback by how gentle and affectionate her voice sounded. It hadn't been that way in a while. Maybe whatever had been weighing on her was finally behind us. By the time I neared the house, night had already fallen. The snow still blanketed the driveway, and what really caught my eye were the tire marks cutting across it. They were much wider than the tracks her Honda would make, and they led directly to the side of the garage where I parked. After pulling in, I stepped back outside to examine the tracks more closely. Only one set of tire marks was visible, leading from the garage down to the street. That meant the vehicle had been inside before the snowfall and left afterward. Judging by the width of the tracks, I couldn't help but think of Nesbitt's Corvette. Mickey met me in the kitchen and kissed me hello. She acted glad to see me, but I wasn't sure I felt the same. I kept quiet about what I'd seen in the snow. I wondered if she'd volunteer an explanation on her own. When I asked casually if she had gone out in the snow, she told me she hadn't. Chapter 6, February 2013. By Monday morning, as I left for work, My suspicion that Mickey was involved with someone else, possibly Nesbit, had grown too strong to ignore. But I couldn't confront her without knowing for certain. I decided to return home a week earlier than usual without letting her know in advance. I took Thursday off, rented a car for anonymity, and drove the 500 miles in just over 7 hours, arriving around 6:15 p.m. I parked the rental a few blocks away in a vacant lot, then walked the final stretch to the house. Peeking into the garage, I saw Mickey's car parked inside, and the house appeared dark. I disabled the alarm and quietly stepped in. A quick scan of the rooms revealed nothing out of the ordinary, no evidence either confirming or denying my fears. I rearmed the security system and went down to the basement to wait. I wanted to see with my own eyes if Mickey was with Nesbit and catch them together if that was the case. Not long after, I heard the low, unmistakable growl of a Corvette engine approach the driveway. I moved toward the kitchen door, hoping to overhear their exchange before revealing myself. I was poised to walk in and confront them until I froze. Nesbit was speaking. "Stop blaming yourself." "You didn't do anything wrong. He made that choice, knowing it would hurt you," Mickey responded, her voice tinged with sorrow. "I know. But isn't there another way to deal with it? You could initiate divorce proceedings and accuse him of infidelity. That would take no less than 6 months, which means we'd have to wait that long before we could be together officially. If he finds out we've been involved during that time, he could countersue, and then the court won't give you the benefit of the doubt. And after all that, you'd only walk away with half of the assets. But we need everything if we want to pull off our plans. With the approach I've outlined, you'll walk away with the whole pie. After everything he's done, pulling you out of your old life, away from your friends and your career, don't you think you deserve it all?" I didn't drag Mickey anywhere, I told myself. We both made the choice to relocate to Asheville. It was a mutual decision, something we agreed was best for us both. But the more I listened, the harder it was to believe what I was hearing. Mickey genuinely believed I had been unfaithful. Where would she even get such an idea? And now she's planning to leave me for Nesbit. A knot twisted in my stomach. The divorce itself didn't really bother me. I had already come to terms with it after discovering she had cheated. But if she thought I had been the one cheating, why didn't she confront me? She didn't even bother to find out the truth. Wouldn't I be the first person they'd suspect? Mickey asked. Suspect her? Suspect her of what? What the hell were they cooking up? My head was spinning. It was like my thoughts were caught in a whirlwind I couldn't stop. I struggled to concentrate on what they were saying, but I had to try. "No one's going to miss him," Nesbit said. "When I take on Tom Mayfield's identity, there won't be anyone looking for the real one. His body won't turn up, ever. We'll sell the house and head west to California. Once I've taken over his name and get a driver's license under it, we'll be in the clear." And that's when it hit me like a brick. They were planning to kill me. Nesbit wasn't just trying to steal my wife. He was planning to become me. But why? What could he possibly gain by stepping into my shoes? "So when's it going to happen?" Mickey asked. "We wait until after he files your taxes," Nesbit replied. "We don't want any problems with the IRS. He should have received his annual bonus by then, too. I'll handle everything. All you need to do is keep him happy and clueless until the time is right." I stood frozen, stunned beyond belief. Mickey, my wife, was actively plotting my murder, right there on the other side of the door, with that scumbag Nesbit. I couldn't believe it. I was still standing on the basement steps when I heard the alarm being armed. Now I was trapped. If I tried to leave, the alarm would go off and tip them off to my presence. So I retreated deeper into the basement and collapsed into an old chair, desperately trying to make sense of what I'd just overheard. I never cheated on Mickey, not once. How could she believe I had? And now she was conspiring with her lover to kill me? What could I even tell the authorities? I didn't have proof, no recordings, no documents, nothing that would hold up in court. Reporting it might scare them off, sure, but that wasn't good enough. I didn't just want to stop them. I wanted to see them both held accountable. Rage burned inside me, but I tried to stay focused. I took a long breath and forced myself to calm down, to tackle this one problem at a time. Since I was stuck in the basement for the night, I needed rest more than anything else. I adjusted myself in the chair, trying to get as comfortable as I could, and eventually drifted into sleep. The next morning, after hearing both cars leave the driveway, I crept upstairs to find food. The frying pan was still on the stove and their dishes were still out. So I didn't worry about leaving any clues behind. I fried a couple eggs, made toast, and reheated some leftover coffee. As I ate, I began putting together a plan. I felt confident I could outmaneuver them, but just in case they got the upper hand, I decided to make sure they wouldn't benefit if something happened to me. According to Nesbitt's timeline, they were aiming for April. That gave me a couple of months to put my counterplan into action. Enough time to destroy theirs and see them face justice. At one point I asked myself, if I could prove to Mickey that I had never cheated, would she still go through with this betrayal? I let the idea sit for a moment before dismissing it. It didn't matter. Even if I had been unfaithful, her decision to murder me while she was sleeping with him, that was beyond forgiveness. They both had to pay. In the following 2 weeks, I started taking quiet but decisive steps. I canceled my life insurance. I rewrote my will, leaving everything to the Salvation Army. I kept a close watch on our joint accounts and investments. By the final week of March, I had done nearly everything I could to prepare. But I was still missing one thing, a solid piece of evidence that could land those two in prison for good. There was still one task I needed to complete, get inside the Nesbitt house. I came back from Memphis on the first Thursday of April without letting anyone know. At 5 p.m., I parked my truck in the lot next to an old shut-down ESSO station off Old Marshall Highway. The fastest route from Asheville to our home led north along Old Marshall Highway past the ESSO, then a left onto Fletcher Martin Road to cross the river, and another left onto Chandler Road. Though the house was only about a quarter mile away in a straight line across the river from where I sat, it took 15 minutes to drive there from the gas station. I kept my eyes on the traffic rolling down Old Marshall Road, waiting to spot Mickey's Honda. It finally passed by at 5:16 p.m. I stayed there to see if Nesbitt's red Corvette would follow her, but the only Corvette I saw was a brand new one in cobalt blue, gliding past 5 minutes later. I considered the possibility that Nesbitt had upgraded his car. Could that blue Corvette be his? Through binoculars, I watched from my spot until I saw that same blue Corvette pulling into my garage. I waited another 30 minutes to be sure they weren't heading out again, then left to find Nesbitt's place. His home was tucked into a wooded area that shielded the neighborhood from view. I parked a street over and approached on foot. From what I could tell, there wasn't any alarm system installed. I didn't want to smash the door unless absolutely necessary, so I walked the perimeter to check for a spare key. Sure enough, I found one perched on the ledge above the back door. The house was a single-story ranch style with 3 bedrooms, one of which had been converted into an office. That's where I began looking. On the desk sat an open laptop, still powered on. I tapped the touchpad and the screen brightened. A quick search of the desk turned up a slip of paper hidden beneath the computer, a list of Nesbitt's passwords. With those in hand, I had no trouble accessing his email. I went through his inbox, scanning for anything that might tie him to criminal activity. There was nothing linking him to Mickey, not a single email from or to her, and nothing about our shared business until I came across a message dated February 3rd. It was from a real estate agent in Deadwood, South Dakota. Dear Mr. Mayfield, as your agent, I'm pleased to inform you that Mr. McRunnell has accepted your $2 million offer to purchase the Deadwood Saloon Hotel and Casino on Main Street. The signed agreement will be sent to you via FedEx once I receive it. Mr. McRunnell's legal team is ready to close as soon as your appraisal funds arrive. He is hopeful we can finalize everything by early May. Looking forward to seeing you at the closing. Sincerely, Matthew Johnson. What the hell? Nesbitt was buying a hotel and casino in Deadwood, and he was doing it under my name? Was this where the money had gone? The $500,000 we'd given him to purchase mineral rights from the Owen family? Was this why he needed to steal my identity? I printed out the email and continued searching through his digital files. None of the other messages were helpful. Then I found a bookmarked link to his bank account and logged in. There was no trace of the $500,000 we'd wired from our bank, no sign it had landed in his personal account. But I did find a check written from his account to a business named Mayfield Enterprises, LLC. Had Mickey and Nesbitt started a company using my name? And what exactly was an LLC? I searched the term and learned it stood for Limited Liability Company, a business structure that protects its owner's personal assets from company-related debts and lawsuits. Could they have set up Mayfield Enterprises LLC to handle the mineral rights deal in North Carolina, or was something even more underhanded happening here? Was that $500,000 funneled into the LLC? Was the Deadwood Hotel and Casino purchase going through the same entity? The deeper I dug, the more questions piled up. In Nesbitt's list of bookmarks, I found one labeled Simply Me. It led to the homepage of a website for Mayfield Enterprises. Front and center was a photo of Mickey and Nesbitt. The caption beneath it read, Thomas and Michelle Mayfield, President and Treasurer of Mayfield Enterprises, LLC. Nesbitt had already hijacked my identity. The website described the company as an investment group focused on acquisitions and mergers. That was all it said, just a placeholder page suggesting it was still under construction. I tried searching the web for more info about Mayfield Enterprises, but nothing came up. That told me the site hadn't been made publicly searchable yet. With the computer turning up no further clues, I turned my attention to the desk drawers. In the top center drawer, I discovered a loaded 9mm pistol. I left it untouched and moved to the upper left drawer, where I found an open FedEx envelope. Inside was a formal contract for the purchase of the Deadwood Saloon, Casino, and Hotel. The agreement showed Mayfield Enterprises offering $2 million, just like the email said. It was signed by Thomas Mayfield, president of Mayfield Enterprises. But the signature wasn't mine. The handwriting didn't look like Mickey's either, so I assumed Nesbitt had forged it. I set the contract down and checked the last drawer. Inside were 2 notepads, one blue, one green. I took them both out and placed them on the desk. I flipped open the green notebook and began to read. There were roughly 50 pages, and they laid out in detail what Nesbitt had been up to over the last couple of years. It read like a draft for a book he intended to write. Only in this version, the main characters weren't fictional. They were Nesbitt, Mickey, and me. He had carefully outlined each phase of his scheme, filling in specifics as events unfolded. Dates, locations, names, all accounted for. The first steps of the plot were set in motion 2 years back, even before he crossed paths with Mickey, and it culminated in his intention to eliminate me. Nesbitt opened with a description of the kind of couple he was looking to exploit. They needed to be around his age, professionally successful, with no children to complicate things. Ideally, they'd just moved to the area and wouldn't have nearby family to rely on. The wife had to be attractive, self-assured, and someone her husband trusted completely. As for the husband, Nesbitt hoped he'd be either frequently traveling or deeply consumed by his work. He went on to describe how he ultimately identified the perfect targets. His search began on LinkedIn, where he built connections with professional women across the southeastern U.S. That's how he found Mickey. Nesbitt spent months observing us until he was certain we matched his criteria. He described Mickey as intelligent and strikingly attractive, someone he'd take pleasure in seducing. Me, he dismissed as a coward, confident that manipulating Mickey against me wouldn't be difficult. He planned to start by convincing her that I'd been unfaithful while working out of town. He launched his seduction in 2011. To get close to her, he snuck into a broker seminar Mickey was attending. He pretended to be a newly relocated investment analyst based in Asheville. He learned that Mickey responded well to praise about her intelligence and style. Flattery about her looks didn't sway her. She didn't need anyone to affirm her beauty. It took him 3 months to persuade her to have lunch with him. But once she agreed, lunch became a regular thing, twice a week or more. Then came the first anonymous message. It claimed I'd cheated on her while working in Tennessee. With her suspicions raised, Nesbitt found it easy to stoke her anger. But he advised her to wait for solid evidence before doing anything drastic. That evidence arrived as another anonymous message, this time with photos attached. The pictures showed a blonde woman dining with me and later entering my hotel room. The images had to be doctored. I'd never seen that woman in my life. We never had dinner, and she certainly never entered my room. Still, the damage was done. Once Mickey was furious enough to consider leaving me, Nesbitt made his move. He seduced her, and their affair began over a year ago. Over time, he told her he was in love with her and intended to marry her once she divorced me. But he urged her not to confront me yet, not until they'd safeguarded the money. He fed her a narrative about how I had wronged her, forcing her to leave her home and relocate to North Carolina, then betraying her during every business trip. Mickey's resentment grew until she declared she wanted me left with nothing. But Nesbitt reminded her that in North Carolina, the law would still grant me half, no matter who was at fault. Eventually, she agreed with him. It wasn't right for me to walk away with anything. That's when he introduced the idea of a permanent solution, my death. It took months for her to get on board, but she finally did. From there, they began orchestrating a way to carry it out without getting caught. The so-called mineral rights investment was a sham from the beginning. Its only purpose was to drain our joint savings and funnel the money to a place beyond my reach. According to the notebook, Mickey told Nesbitt that I was clueless about our finances and had total faith in her. If she had told me that investing in mining rights was smart, I would have believed her without question. They tricked me into signing the LLC formation documents and handing over all our savings. Like a fool, I fell for it. In his notebook on page 46, Nesbitt mentioned that he had already dug a grave 20 miles further north and listed the exact GPS coordinates. They had chosen how they'd kill me, just not when. Nesbitt had a small stash of cyanide. When the time came, Mickey was supposed to slip it into my coffee. After I died, Nesbitt would haul my body to the gravesite, dump me into the pit, and bury me. Once I was out of the way, Nesbitt planned to assume my identity. He would become Tom Mayfield. They would send a resignation letter to my employer, liquidate my assets, and vanish without a trace. No one would suspect a thing. Based on what I'd uncovered, it seemed Mickey had played a part in forming Mayfield Enterprises, LLC. But I doubted she knew Nesbitt's full plan, particularly his scheme to buy the Deadwood Saloon, Hotel, and Casino. Her involvement appeared to have an expiration date. Mickey seemed aware of most of what Nesbitt had in mind, but I couldn't believe she knew everything. If she had seen the notebook, especially the last page, she would have been horrified. Page 50 detailed the coordinates of another grave, this one dug in Colorado. It was for her. The notebook was damning, undeniable evidence. But I had a problem. I had broken into Nesbitt's house to get it. Legally, the notebook was stolen property. Nesbitt could easily claim it was just a draft for a novel or screenplay. Mickey wouldn't be thrilled about its contents, but I suspected she'd play along with Nesbitt's cover story to save herself. So, instead of going to the authorities right away, I decided to confront them. I'd let Mickey read what was in the notebook while recording the conversation, then take everything to the police. My plan was to wait until Friday and see if Nesbitt would spend the night at Mickey's. If he did, I'd use the opportunity to retrieve the green notebook from his place. I returned everything exactly as I'd found it, locked the house, and left the spare key behind the back door. That night, I checked into a motel about 5 miles from Old Marshall Highway. Chapter 8. On Friday morning after breakfast, I entered the GPS coordinates from the green notebook into my phone and headed out to find my own grave. The directions took me 15 miles north on Old Marshall Highway to a stretch of road that looked like an old farm path. I drove about half a mile down the trail before the GPS signaled I had arrived. I descended a wooded hill that ended in a swampy clearing. It took about 10 minutes of searching before I saw it. A tarp covering a pile of dirt atop a sheet of plywood. Another board lay beside it, hiding a rectangular hole roughly 6 feet long and 4 feet deep. That was where they planned to bury me. At 5 p.m., I parked again at the old ESSO station and waited for Mickey to pass by on her way home. She drove by at 4:45, and I waited another hour to see if Nesbitt would follow. When he didn't appear by 6, I went to check his place. His blue Corvette was parked in the driveway. I left my vehicle on a nearby street and waited, hoping to confirm whether he'd stay the night. At 6:30, he came out, got into his car, and drove off. I tailed him to the ESSO station, then waited to see if he'd go to my house. 15 minutes later, I saw him pull into my driveway and head straight for the garage. The moment the door shut behind him, I made a beeline back to his house. I checked his email and did another sweep, making sure I hadn't overlooked anything critical. I grabbed a notepad and the purchase agreement for the Deadwood Saloon, Hotel, and Casino. Just as I was about to leave, I remembered the gun. I had to know if it was still there. It was tucked away in its usual drawer. I decided to take it for my own protection. I got back home a little after 8. Since Nesbitt had taken my spot in the garage, I parked on the street. I tucked the gun into my waistband at the small of my back and pulled my coat over it before entering the house through the garage. As I stepped into the kitchen, I heard music and voices coming from the living room. I placed the notebook on the kitchen table and crept toward the archway that led into the next room. What I saw made my stomach turn. They were laughing and drinking wine, a half-empty bottle sitting on the coffee table between them. The music masked my approach. They hadn't even noticed me standing there. Rage swelled in my chest. I nearly ended it all right there. But instead, I walked back into the kitchen, turned on the audio recorder on my phone, and took a long, calming breath. Then I stepped into the living room to confront them. "I take it you weren't expecting me this weekend?" I said, raising my voice to compete with the blaring music. Nesbitt sprang up so abruptly that he tumbled off the couch, while Mickey let out a sharp scream, her wine glass slipping from her hand and shattering. For a moment it all felt absurd, almost like a scene out of a dark comedy. Mickey, after the initial jolt of surprise, didn't seem overly fazed. She casually rose to her feet and headed upstairs to the bedroom we shared. "How about we sit down and wait for Mickey to come back?" I suggested, keeping my voice steady. "Let's not blow this out of proportion," Nesbitt replied. "You can't be serious. You're in my house with my wife and you think this doesn't warrant a reaction?" He raised both hands slowly, signaling that he understood the gravity of the situation. Neither of us spoke again until Mickey returned, now wearing her robe. She glanced from me to Nesbitt. Then Nesbitt, with a smug curve to his lips, said, "I wouldn't mind a cup of coffee." "What do you think?" "Mickey, why don't you make some?" I added, watching closely. Mickey entered the kitchen looking composed, but as soon as Nesbitt gave her the order, her demeanor shifted. Calm gave way to unease. That flicker of emotion on her face made one thing clear to me. Nesbitt had just given her the signal. He wanted her to poison my drink. It seemed Nesbitt had decided it was time for me to exit one way or another. From my vantage point, I could see Mickey filling the machine with grounds and water. Then she vanished from view, most likely to prepare what she believed would be my final cup of coffee. She didn't return right away, and the silence that settled into the room grew heavier with each passing second. "So," I finally said, breaking the tension, "how long have you two been sneaking around behind my back?" Nesbitt let that annoying grin surface again. "We've been in love for just over a year now." We sat wordless for about 10 minutes, until the familiar hiss of the coffee maker marked the final stage of brewing. Another few minutes slipped by before Nesbitt called out, "Sweetheart, if you're not busy, how about that coffee?" "I'll be right there," Mickey answered. 5 more minutes crawled by before I saw her again, this time with a tray in her hands. She brought the cups into the room and placed the tray on the table. She handed me mine, setting it gently on the small side table beside my chair, and passed Nesbitt his directly. When she finally took a seat, Mickey glanced at me with an expression full of quiet sorrow. I hoped it was a sign of guilt. Nesbitt lifted his cup and took a sip, then gave Mickey an affectionate smile. I picked mine up too, held it for a moment, then placed it back on the table. "It's too hot," I said evenly, watching them both. Then I turned to Mickey. "So tell me, why? What made you fall for that lowlife?" Nesbitt's smirk reappeared as he sipped again, then said to Mickey, "Go on. Tell him. What difference does it make now?" "You were never around," she said, eyes on the floor. "Dave was. He convinced me I'd be happier with him." A strange answer. I'd expected something more defensive, an accusation, a justification. Even Nesbitt looked thrown by her reply. It clearly didn't match the narrative he'd built in his head. I picked up the cup again and murmured, "That's a pretty weak justification for cheating." Nesbitt looked at Mickey, agitated now. "There was more to it than that. It wasn't just a fling. Mickey's going to marry me. once you're out of the picture." I lifted the cup again, held it like I was about to drink, and watched her reaction. But Mickey wasn't looking at me. Her eyes were on him. He, in turn, watched me, waiting for me to sip, anticipating the moment. I put the cup back down. "Time to end the charade. Mickey, could you grab that notebook I left on the kitchen table?" I asked. She stood without a word. I reached beneath my jacket and drew the gun, not to hide it, but to keep it visible just behind my right hip. "What notebook?" Nesbit asked, his voice tighter. "The one I found in your desk drawer last night while you were here playing house," I said. "Green cover, full of your little schemes for how this was all supposed to go." When Mickey returned with the notebook, Nesbit snatched it from her hands. "It's just something I scribbled down. A story. Nothing serious." "Did you show it to Mickey?" "I don't think she needs to read it." "I do." Mickey didn't say anything. She sat down again, eyes fixed on Nesbit. "There's no need for her to read it," he insisted. "But the cops will definitely want to. Especially when they find the cyanide in the coffee." I paused, letting that land. "You're both in a hell of a lot more trouble than you realize." Nesbit started walking toward me, but stopped dead in his tracks when he caught sight of the pistol I had raised. "Sit down," I said coldly. "Don't push your luck." He reached for his coffee cup, looking like he might fling it at me. I stood and leveled the gun at his face. I said, "Sit down and shut your mouth." He obeyed, slowly lowering himself back into his chair. I followed suit, keeping the gun in view. Both Nesbit and Mickey stared at me, waiting for what would happen next. Nesbit took a sip of coffee, trying to play it cool, but Mickey wasn't hiding her nerves at all. Finally, she spoke. "Tom, I screwed up," she said. "But you should know, I didn't put anything in your drink." Nesbit glared at her. "What the hell did you do?" "I was in the kitchen and saw a notebook," she said, her voice shaking. "I read it. Everything you told me, everything, was a lie. I nearly destroyed Tom because I believed you. I thought I was protecting myself, but all along, you were planning to use me and then throw me away. I was such a fool." She paused, looked at him, and added with quiet fury, "But not anymore." "I poisoned your coffee." Nesbit jumped up from his chair, shouting, "You bitch!" and lunged at her. But Mickey stumbled backward, and he hit the ground instead. When he tried to rise, his breathing came out ragged. His lips started to darken, and within moments, he collapsed again, his body twitching. He convulsed violently for a few seconds, then lay still. It was over in less than 5 minutes. Mickey sank onto the sofa and stared at his corpse. Tears spilled down her cheeks. After a moment, she turned to me and said through sobs, "I'm sorry, Tom. You should call the police. I'll tell them everything. I'll say I did it." I picked up the phone, holding it without dialing, trying to piece together what I'd say when someone answered. A tight knot formed in my gut as I stared at Nesbit's body. I got up and walked into the kitchen, the phone still in my hand, and sat down at the table. Mickey followed and took a seat across from me. She covered her face with her arms, her voice muffled. "I can't believe I let him ruin my life like this. I should have seen it. I let everything fall apart. I deserve whatever happens now." I said nothing. She looked up, eyes red and full of guilt. "Tom, aren't you going to make the call?" "Get me a beer," I said. "Let me think this through." "Nesbit's not going anywhere," I added. "So what's the rush?" I sat silently for about 10 or 15 minutes, then took a slow sip from the beer she handed me. I drained it before speaking again. "You want to avoid prison?" I asked. "How can I? I killed him. You saw me." "You said there's a notebook. His plan to take me down with your help?" She nodded. "It's in the kitchen drawer." I didn't show it to anyone. I didn't tell anyone about what we were doing, about him and me. Nobody knows. We kept it all hidden. "You asked if I meant staying out of jail," I said, leaning forward. "Here's how. We make his plan work, with one change. He takes my place in that grave." Her face turned pale. "You're going to bury him?" she whispered. "No," I said, "we are." I pointed toward the living room. "Start by emptying his pockets. I need his wallet, his keys, everything he had on him. This isn't just my problem, Mickey. You were in love with him. You killed him. So now you help finish it." Mickey walked slowly to where Nesbit lay. With trembling hands, she pulled his wallet from his back pocket, then rolled him over to search the front. When she was done, she came back and handed me the wallet and keys without a word. "I'll warm up the truck while you get dressed," I said, heading for the garage. Before I could even think about starting my truck, I had to back out Nesbit's Corvette. Sitting behind the wheel of that sleek machine, I couldn't help but imagine what it would feel like to own something like it. That daydream was short-lived. Concern about the car's implications snapped me out of it. I shelved the thought for later, parked the Corvette out on the street, and pulled my truck into the garage, nudging it as close to the kitchen entrance as I could. When I got back inside, Mickey was waiting in the kitchen. She had changed into jeans and a sweatshirt. Together, we hauled the body to the garage and lifted it into the bed of my truck. I tossed one of my work tarps over it to keep it hidden. "Get in the truck," I told her, while I double-checked the gear, making sure the shovel and the hand truck were both where I'd left them. Chapter 9. The first stretch of the drive was uneventful. 10 quiet, steady minutes. Then I broke the silence. "Why'd you do it, Mickey? Why turn on me like that?" "Dave got into my head," she said. "He told me you were unfaithful." She glanced over at me before continuing. "He kept saying he loved me, that I should leave you and start over with him." "Why kill me?" I asked. "Why not just leave?" "It was about the money," she admitted. "Dave said that if you were out of the picture, we could pool everything and launch Mayfield Enterprises. He promised it would make us rich." Her voice cracked a little. "He fed off my anger. It made me believe you'd betrayed me. I was so naive. I know you'll never forgive me. I'm not sure I can forgive myself." I let her words hang in the air without a response. "What was the point of stealing my identity?" I finally asked. "Dave said it would stop anyone from asking questions," she replied. "The plan was to make it look like we both quit our jobs, sold the house, and moved out west, California." "When did Nesbit buy the Corvette?" I asked. "Just a few days ago," she answered. "That car might cause problems," I said. "We need to make sure nobody's out there searching for Nesbit." "Think we can sell it?" I asked. Mickey paused. Then she let out a sudden laugh. "You think this is funny?" I shot back. "No," she said, still chuckling. "But what you just said is a little ironic." "Explain." "Dave had Mayfield Enterprises lease the car for its president. Guess who that is?" "You're joking." "Nope. It's registered to Thomas Mayfield, and now that you're Thomas Mayfield, problem solved." I felt a rush of excitement at the thought of owning such a car, but reality yanked me back. "Tell me more about Mayfield Enterprises," I said. "We set it up to acquire struggling companies," she explained. "We'd break them up, sell the valuable assets, and move on. Started small, then scaled up as profits grew. Like a smash and grab," I said. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It's when a group busts into a jewelry store, smashes the cases, grabs everything shiny, and bolts before the cops show. Your operation sounds the same. Tear apart small companies, loot the good stuff, and run." "You make it sound criminal. If it walks like a duck—" "I don't think Nesbit saw it that way," she said defensively. "What do you know about the Deadwood Saloon Hotel and Casino?" I asked. "Nothing," she said. "Never heard of it." I pulled a purchase agreement and a letter from the real estate agent out of my pocket and handed them to her. She flicked on the overhead light and read through the documents. When she finished, she just shook her head. "Unless we can find a way out of this deal, Mayfield Enterprises is about to become the proud owner of the Deadwood Saloon," she said. "He didn't tell you anything about this?" "Not a word." After that, neither of us spoke again until we reached the burial site, and the drive back home was just as quiet. When we returned, I left the truck out in the driveway, backed the Corvette into the garage, and watched Mickey disappear into the house. When I stepped into the kitchen, Mickey passed me a beer and asked, "So what now?" "Life continues," I replied. "I'll be back in Memphis by Sunday, and you'll head back to work like nothing happened on Monday." "Does that mean we're still together?" she asked. "No, we're done. While I wrap things up in Memphis, you'll need to hire a lawyer and begin the divorce process. We're not to mention Mayfield Enterprises to anyone. You created it. And now it's your job to dismantle it so we can recover what we can. I can't think straight anymore tonight, I added. It's been a long day. I'm exhausted. We'll talk more tomorrow. I'll be in the guest room. Chapter 10. When I came downstairs the next morning, Mickey was already up. I made some coffee, she said, noticing my hesitation. She caught my expression and quickly added, There's nothing in it. I'll have a cup, I said. I poured us each one and sat across from her. I've been thinking about where we stand, I said. We can't dissolve Mayfield Enterprises yet, Mickey replied. Why not, I asked. The biggest issue is the deal for that hotel and casino in Deadwood, South Dakota. I looked over the agreement again this morning. There's a clause that requires a 10% deposit, $150,000, by April 10th, just to proceed with inspections. And if we don't pay? I asked. They'll sue us, she said. We'll be out the deposit and stuck with legal costs. The only real option is to move forward and try to make the property profitable. Maybe we should at least visit before deciding, she continued. Oh, and don't forget, your Corvette is leased through Mayfield Enterprises. You're not ready to give that up, are you? Chapter 11. After we finished eating, I told Mickey my plan. I was going to collect the tarp and plywood from the burial site and stash them in Nesbitt's garage. I didn't want anything that could link us to be found near our place. Then I'm going to search his house. Make sure nothing ties him back to us or gives anyone reason to dig into his disappearance. I'm coming with you, Mickey said. At the house, I asked Mickey to go through Nesbitt's bedroom and clothes, searching for anything that could trace back to either of us. Meanwhile, I went into the study. I shut down his computer and packed it up. I emptied every drawer, found a few keys in one and tossed them in the box too, along with every stray paper on the desk. Just as I was about to throw in a blue notebook, I hesitated. I hadn't checked it yet. Inside, I found yet another one of Nesbitt's elaborate schemes. From what I could tell, it predated his involvement in my life by about 2 years. This time, the victim was a young woman named Claire. He'd targeted her for the inheritance she received from her grandfather. He convinced her to invest a large sum in what he claimed was a land deal in North Carolina. The day after he got the money, instead of heading to North Carolina like he promised, he stole a car and used it to force Claire's car off a cliff. 100-foot drop. He then ditched the stolen vehicle and vanished with the money. When Mickey walked into the study, I handed her the blue notebook. Read this, I said. It might make you feel a little less guilty. She read it, then broke down in tears. He was a monster, she said. I'm ashamed I didn't see it sooner. I gave her a moment to collect herself, then asked, Did you find anything in the bedroom? Just a few restaurant receipts, she replied. I tossed them. That was it. I'll come back Monday to clear out the trash, I said. Anywhere else we should check? No, she said. I already went through the kitchen and the hallway closet. I swept the table's contents into a box. We'll take everything back and examine it more closely at home. Back at our place, Mickey and I sifted through the documents. Anything irrelevant went straight to the trash. One document stood out, the closing statement from Nesbitt's house purchase. It revealed the property was owned by a shell company called Nesco. I booted up his laptop and started digging. In a folder disguised as music files, I found records related to Nesco and passed the laptop to Mickey. As she combed through them, I kept sorting papers. One small item I nearly missed was a receipt. A rental agreement for a safe deposit box at Asheville Savings Bank, registered under the name Thomas Mayfield. Another clear move by Nesbitt to steal my identity. I wondered whether one of the keys I found earlier might unlock that box. There were 5 different keys in total. One appeared to belong to a safety deposit box, and another looked like it could open a mailbox. I brought this up to Mickey, mentioning both the mailbox and the deposit box keys. A significant amount of money was involved with Nesco. Dave had funneled $500,000 from it into Mayfield, and its current holdings were around $540,000. Besides the cash, Nesco also owned Dave's house and, as we recently discovered, a property in the Cayman Islands. Nesco's listed address was simply a P.O. box in Asheville. I told Mickey I'd head over to the Asheville post office the next day to check if one of the keys would open that box. I'm a little concerned about the safe deposit situation, Mickey said. Not sure what our options are if we hit a snag. One of those keys might be to that house in the Caymans. I replied. Maybe Nesbit even had a bank account down there. We spent the rest of the afternoon going over details about Mayfield Enterprises and the pending acquisition of the Deadwood Saloon Hotel and Casino. We estimated that we'd need to come up with $150,000 by April. Then, in May, we'd visit Deadwood together to look for any critical flaws with the property, enough to potentially walk away from the deal without sacrificing what we spent on due diligence. For now, I returned to Memphis to wrap up my projects, while Mickey went back to her job. Before leaving on Sunday morning, I turned to her and said, "Now that Nesbit's out of the picture, I hope I can count on you not to betray me." "You don't have to worry," Mickey assured me. "We're in this as a team now. We'll need each other to make this work." As I stepped outside, I told her, "I'll see you in 2 weeks." Chapter 12. Over the next 14 days, I completed my assignments in Tennessee and then took a week-long break. When I got back, Mickey filled me in on the updates. She said she'd been checking Nesco's P.O. box every day. Aside from spam, the only real mail had been a Visa bill. She told me she had discovered Nesbit's login credentials and had successfully accessed Nesco's bank accounts to pay the bill online. I mentioned that I was thinking about flying to the Cayman Islands to check out the house Nesbit had owned. Mickey wanted to come along but said her schedule wouldn't allow for a last-minute trip. I flew in on a Sunday and landed at 2 p.m. After grabbing a cab, I made my way to the Grand Cayman address. The place was a cozy 2-bedroom bungalow with a stunning ocean view. No one answered when I knocked, so I tried the keys I had, and one of them worked. The house was fully furnished but had obviously been unoccupied for quite some time. Dust blanketed the surfaces, and a musty odor hung in the air from being sealed up for too long. I sent Mickey a text to let her know what I'd found. She suggested I hire a local cleaning service and set them up to clean the house monthly unless we needed it ready for visitors. The expenses, she said, would be charged to Nesco. Our plan was to use the house as both a personal getaway and possibly a rental when we weren't using it. I stayed until Thursday, soaking up the sun and the beach before heading back. Once home, Mickey told me she'd been thinking. "I have an idea," she said. "We should merge Nesco with Mayfield Enterprises. Then we can sell Dave's house here and hold on to the one in the Caymans." "How are we going to make that happen?" "You'll have to pose as David Nesbit. We'll meet with a lawyer and have you grant me power of attorney to handle the merger between Nesco LLC and Mayfield Enterprises LLC. "That's a stretch," I said. "I don't look anything like Nesbit." "Start with a mustache," she replied. "Once it grows out, I'll dye your hair and cut it to match his. I can make you resemble his passport and driver's license photos well enough to fool someone who doesn't know him." "You already have a lawyer?" "Yes, and he's familiar with me. He won't suspect a thing. Once I get the power of attorney, I'll draft the paperwork to merge the companies and arrange for Nesbit's share of Nesco to be bought out." "And how do we pay Nesbit for his share?" "We'll open a bank account in the Cayman Islands in his name and transfer the funds there." "We'll retrieve the money afterward," she said. "One last thing. You need to open a safety deposit box at Asheville Savings and Loan." It took 2 weeks for me to grow facial hair that resembled Dave Nesbit's. When it was long enough, Mickey dyed and styled my hair until I closely matched Nesbit's ID photos. I was anxious going into the meeting with the lawyer, but everything went exactly as Mickey predicted. She managed the company merger, while I traveled to Asheville to try my luck with the safety deposit box. There were no complications. The bank employee escorted me into the vault and left me alone with the box. I unlocked it and lifted the lid. What I found inside stopped me cold. A .32 caliber handgun, $20,000 in cash, a passport bearing my name but with Nesbit's photo, and a checkbook from the Bank of Grand Cayman. The ledger inside showed that the account held over $1 million. For a moment, I thought my knees might buckle. I took a few steadying breaths, then resumed looking through the contents of the drawer. A few documents didn't seem important, so I slid them into the briefcase with the gun, the stack of cash, my passport, and the savings ledger. The final item inside the box was a small card listing several phone numbers along with what looked like access codes or passwords. There were no hints about what the passwords unlocked or who the phone numbers might reach. When I got home, I laid everything from the safe out in front of Mickey. Without hesitation, she handed me $10,000 in cash and pocketed the other 10 grand for herself. Then she turned on her computer, logged into the Grand Cayman Bank's website, and, using one of the passwords from the card, successfully accessed Nesbitt's account. "What should we do with the money he tucked away in that offshore account?" I asked. "It's anonymous, just a number, no name attached," she replied. "With the account number and password in hand, we're in control of it now." Mickey immediately updated the account's password, locking out anyone else who might try to get in. Then she looked at me and said, "Let's call this ours." I say we don't touch it. Just let it sit there until we really need it. "With David Nesbitt permanently out of our lives," she added, "it's time to focus on making something worthwhile out of Mayfield Enterprises and the Deadwood Saloon Hotel and Casino. That'll keep us plenty occupied." She suggested we drive down, assess the property ourselves, and explore any possible way to back out of the agreement. And if we couldn't, then we'd have no choice but to learn how to run a hotel and casino from the ground up. Chapter 13. Thursday, December 19th, 2013. An hour before everything went sideways, I had just wrapped up a final walkthrough with the contractor and decided to stop for a drink before heading home. I sat nursing a double bourbon, quietly reflecting on everything that had happened over the past year. 10 months ago, back in February, my entire world had been turned inside out. That was when I discovered Mickey was not only having an affair. She and her lover were plotting to kill me. Their scheme unraveled during a showdown between Mickey and David Nesbitt, which ended with Nesbitt dead. Now, nearly a year later, I was no longer the project manager at SASC. Instead, I was sitting at the helm of Mayfield Enterprises as its president and CEO, with Mickey handling finances as the company's CFO. In May, the two of us flew to Deadwood, South Dakota, to conduct a final evaluation of the Deadwood Saloon Hotel and Casino. We were hoping to find a loophole that would let us cancel the purchase and recover our $150,000. But the property matched the sale listing exactly. No way out. So we put down a $500,000 deposit, secured a business loan for the remaining amount, and Mayfield Enterprises LLC officially took ownership of the Deadwood Saloon Hotel and Casino. The mansion needed serious work, so I relocated to Deadwood to oversee renovations personally. Mickey stayed back in North Carolina, continuing her brokerage work while managing the company's financials remotely. We renamed the place the Deadwood Hotel and Casino, and for the past few months it had been buzzing with contractors and workers preparing for our grand opening on Saturday, December 21st. I polished off the last of my drink and looked around the saloon we'd christened the 1870 Mayfield Saloon. We'd designed it to capture the essence of a bygone era, and walking through its doors felt like stepping into the past. Satisfied with the transformation, I made my way to the truck. I still owned the Corvette, but winter in Deadwood made it impractical to drive. Just as I reached for the door handle, a voice called out behind me, asking if I was Tom Mayfield. I turned to answer, and that's when they jumped me. 3 men came at me fast. 2 of them wrestled my arms behind my back and tied my wrists, while the third shoved a bag over my head. I struggled, trying to break free, but they slammed me against the wall and held me there. I tried to speak, to ask what was happening, but one of them delivered a brutal kick to my kidneys. "Shut up," he barked. We stayed like that for a few tense minutes until a vehicle pulled up nearby. When the car came to a stop, they shoved me into the back seat and pushed me onto the floor. I had no clue what they were after, but terror crept in fast. My mind raced with possibilities. Was this tied to the casino? Was Mickey betraying me again, plotting to have me killed to take full control of Mayfield Enterprises? Time blurred as we drove. Maybe 30 minutes passed before the vehicle rolled into a garage. I heard the door close behind us. Rough hands yanked me out and marched me between 2 of the men. They half-dragged me up a set of stairs, then down a hallway and into what felt like a room. They dropped me into a chair and warned me to keep my mouth shut. I still couldn't see anything, just a sliver of wood floor through the bag over my head. "We got him," one of them said. "Did he give you any trouble?" asked a voice so deep and gravelly it sounded like it had been scraped from the bottom of a pit. Laughter echoed through the room. "Not a bit." "Go get CJ," the gravel-voiced man said. Chapter 14. CJ? Who the hell was that? I didn't know anyone by that name, and I was completely in the dark about what was happening. Minutes passed, each one longer than the last, until I heard the door open and someone new enter the room. The moment I heard the sharp clicks of high heels echoing across the wooden floor, I knew it was a woman approaching. As she drew near, her perfume reached me, a rich, heady scent that wrapped around my senses. But before I could process anything further, a sudden blow struck the left side of my face with brutal force. My head snapped to the side, and for a few stunned seconds, everything blurred. I braced for a second hit, muscles taut with anticipation. But instead, someone yanked a hood off my head. My vision swam briefly before settling on the figure before me. She had deep brown eyes, striking features, and long, dark hair that bordered on black. We locked eyes in silence. Then I noticed faint scars, one above her brow, another near her chin. They didn't lessen her beauty. If anything, they gave her an edge. She examined me for a moment, then abruptly turned away and snapped. "This isn't him. You brought me the wrong guy." I couldn't tell if that was good or bad news. "This is Tom Mayfield," one of the men who had taken me said. "He's the one you told us to bring in." "Jesus, Jimmy," the woman hissed. "I gave you a photo of Howard." "This man isn't him." Then her gaze shifted back to me. "Who are you?" she demanded. "My name's Tom Mayfield," I answered. "No way," she muttered, suspicious. "You know a guy named Howard Mason?" "Never heard of him," I replied. She studied me again, then turned toward a middle-aged man sitting quietly at a desk. "Why is it impossible for these morons to get anything right?" she snapped. All they had to do was make sure the guy matched the photo. If Howard was really in Deadwood, we've probably missed our shot. "CJ, take it easy," the man behind the desk said in a rough, gravelly tone. It was the same voice I'd heard earlier. "You said the car dealer said his name was Tom Mayfield," Jimmy offered defensively, gesturing at me. "And he said he's Tom Mayfield." My stomach tightened into a knot. "Can I see the picture you're talking about?" I asked. All 5 people in the room turned their attention to me. "Jimmy, give it here," CJ ordered. He handed her the photo, which she then held up in front of my face. The moment I saw it, alarm bells exploded in my mind. "You recognize this man?" she asked, pointing directly at David Nesbitt. The photo showed Nesbitt standing next to a cobalt blue 2013 Corvette, the very same car parked in my garage. And in that moment, I knew there wasn't a single lie that would dig me out of this hole. So I gave them the truth, or at least a version of it. "I know him as David Nesbitt," I said. "He's a scam artist who tried to steal my identity and screw me over." "Where is he?" she asked. "These cuffs are cutting off my circulation," I said. "Let me go, and I'll tell you what I know." I was afraid they'd beat the answer out of me if I didn't offer something fast. But I had to take the risk. My hands were already going numb. "Jimmy, uncuff him," CJ instructed. Once my wrists were free, I answered. "Last time I saw him was in North Carolina. He had just bought that Corvette." Given how furious CJ looked, I guessed she had her own history with Nesbitt. So I asked the obvious question. "How much did he take from you?" She pulled out a chair and sat directly across from me. "What makes you think he took anything?" "He's a professional con man. That's his M.O. And I'm guessing he changed names after burning you so you wouldn't be able to track him down. Plus, that punch you gave me, you don't hit like that unless you've been seriously wronged." CJ didn't flinch. "He took just over $500,000, she said. "It was my grandfather's inheritance. I want every cent back." "For the past 2.5 years, I've known him as David Nesbitt," I explained. "When did he scam you?" 5 years ago, she said. "He was supposed to use the money to buy property in North Carolina. The plan was to flip it to developers for a big payout. He left ahead of me, and I was going to meet him in Raleigh a few days later. But I got into a serious car crash the next day, ended up in the hospital for nearly a week. By the time I got out, he was gone. I've been chasing his trail ever since. Damn. I already knew her story. Nesbitt, or Mason, or whatever the hell his real name was, had written all of this down in a blue notebook. "Does the C in CJ stand for Claire by any chance?" I asked. She narrowed her eyes. "How do you know that?" "I've got some information you really need to see," I told her. "But it's back at my place in Deadwood. If you come with me, I'll show you everything. It should clear things up." "And why would I trust you?" she asked. "You've got nothing to lose," I said. "Bring Jimmy and the others along if you want." "You better not be screwing with me." Jimmy looked ready to go to work on my arms again, but CJ noticed the bruises on my wrists and stepped in before he could do anything. Chapter 15. We made the drive back to Deadwood with CJ at the wheel. I was wedged in the back seat between Jimmy and a guy named Dan. When we finally pulled into the driveway, I turned to Jimmy. "I've got to grab something from the safe. Just so you know, there's a gun in there. I don't want any misunderstandings, so I'll open it and you can take the gun out yourself." He looked uncertain but followed me into the office anyway. I spun the dial, opened the safe, and stepped aside so Jimmy could retrieve the weapon. Then I took out 2 notepads and walked back to the living room where CJ was waiting. "I'd like to keep this conversation mostly between us," I said. "Let Jimmy and Dan hang out in the kitchen." CJ glanced at Jimmy, who waited for her signal. She nodded. "There's beer in the fridge and some liquor on the counter," I told them. Turning back to CJ, I said, "I'm going to pour myself a bourbon. Want something before we start?" "This isn't a date," she said with a slight smirk. "And we're not sleeping together afterward." It was the first time she'd shown any humor, and it was oddly comforting. "Wouldn't that be something?" I joked. "But once you see what I'm about to show you, you'll probably need a drink. Anyway, I don't date women who bring bodyguards." That made her chuckle, just a little. "All right," she said. "Bourbon on the rocks." Jimmy and Dan stayed in the kitchen with beers in hand, keeping a watchful eye, while CJ and I sat in the living room. "How did you track down that photo you showed me earlier?" I asked. "When I first met Howard, he drove a Corvette. He mentioned he leased a new one every 3 years. I gave that and a photo of him to my PI. Somehow he found a dealership in Asheville, North Carolina that had leased a Corvette to the guy in your picture." "And the dealership confirmed it was him?" I asked. "Yeah, said the name on the lease was Tom Mayfield. The photo was taken the day he picked up the car." "That's impressive," I said. "Your investigator really dug deep. But how did you end up in Deadwood?" "A Google search," she said. "Your name came up in connection to a hotel. I called the number, asked the girl who answered if you were the Tom Mayfield from North Carolina. She said yes. I told CJ how Mickey and I had wound up in the Asheville area and how I discovered her affair with Nesbitt. It wasn't just betrayal. She was conspiring to ruin me. That realization changed everything. While Mickey and Nesbitt were playing house at my place, I paid a visit to his. That's where I found the notebooks. I handed the green one to CJ. This outlines his plan. He wanted to kill me, assume my identity, and then murder Mickey. "You're obviously still alive, so what happened to Mickey and Howard? Or Nesbitt?" "I just call him the asshole to keep it simple," I said. "How'd you stop them? Where are they now?" "We'll get to that," I replied, sliding the blue notepad toward her. "But first you should read this." I stood and collected our empty glasses. "I'll refill the drinks. You'll want privacy with this one." Back in the kitchen, I added ice and bourbon to both glasses and brought CJ's back to her. I set it down quietly and watched as she began reading. After a minute, I returned to the kitchen. She spent nearly 20 minutes flipping through that notebook. When she finished, she buried her face in her hands and started sobbing. When I walked back in, she looked up at me, eyes red. "He tried to kill me," she choked. "It wasn't some accident. He ran me off the road and right into a cliff, just left me there to die." She paused, tears running down her face. "I trusted him. And he tried to murder me. Now every time I see these ugly scars, I'll be reminded of that bastard." CJ stood abruptly and walked into the kitchen. She held out the car keys to Jimmy. "You two go wait in the car," she said. "You sure?" Jimmy asked, concerned. CJ glanced back at me. "It seems Tom and I are members of a very exclusive, very unfortunate club," she said. "And it's not something we want to discuss in front of outsiders." As they stepped outside, Jimmy passed my firearm over to CJ. "Just in case," he muttered. Once they were gone, CJ handed the weapon back to me. "You're not a danger to me, right?" she asked. "Of course not," I assured her. She walked into the kitchen, poured herself another bourbon, and came back. I looked at her, hesitating before asking about the scars. "Were those from the crash? When exactly did that happen?" "I think you already know it wasn't just a crash," she replied. "It happened in April of 2010. "What do you believe happened?" I asked. "I veered off the road and drove off a cliff. The car flew about 100 feet before crashing nose first onto the rocks by Lake Erie. That's the last thing I know for certain. When rescuers pulled me out, I was unconscious. I didn't wake up for 2 days. I remember nothing about the moment it happened, and apparently no one witnessed it. The scars on my face came from the airbag deploying and smashing into me. It's hard enough knowing I'll carry these scars forever. But what hurts more is how they constantly remind me of the mistake I made letting that man into my life. They don't take away from your beauty, I told her. Honestly, I think they give you a certain mystique. I could sit here looking at you all night and never be distracted by them. CJ blushed faintly and let out a laugh. You're still angling to get me into your bed, aren't you? Is it working? No. All right then, I said. Tell me what happened next. So I explained to CJ what had gone down that night, the confrontation. How the bastard had told Mickey to make coffee. How, in that moment, Mickey read through the notebook and realized that Nesbitt wasn't just playing her. He was planning to kill her too. She slipped cyanide into his coffee, I said. He dropped dead minutes later. And the police? CJ asked. Nothing. We never involved them. I pulled out my green notepad and pointed to the section about the grave, the one Nesbitt had dug for me, complete with GPS coordinates. He's buried there now. In the grave, he dug himself. Why didn't you report it? She pressed. I wanted to, but calling the authorities might have led to financial ruin. Nesbitt and Mickey had all our assets entangled in Mayfield Enterprises. If the police launched an investigation, it could have frozen those funds indefinitely. It might have taken years and a mountain of legal fees to get access to my own money again. And what about your wife? Mickey? We divorced. It might sound odd, but she's my business partner now. She understands finances and business operations. That's her domain. I focus on the operational side of things. We sat in silence for a while. Then CJ dropped her head and began to cry. I didn't know what to do. A hug felt too risky, so I just sat quietly. After a few moments, she wiped her eyes and looked up. I came to Deadwood hoping I'd find Howard, force him to return what he stole from me. But now that he's gone, I'll never see that money again. I let that sink in before speaking. We kept talking for a couple more hours. That's when I learned her full name was Claire Johnson. She was a CPA, taught accounting at a community college in Erie, and worked part-time at an accounting firm during tax season. As for Jimmy Dan and the third guy who'd held me, they all worked for her father. Mr. Johnson, a man with a gravelly voice, ran a trucking business out of Erie, Pennsylvania. He had rented the house near Deadwood as a base of operations while waiting for the right chance to grab me. If I had been Howard Mason, would your father have had me killed? I asked. CJ smirked. I don't know. Maybe that's not funny, I said. If you could have seen your own face, you'd be laughing too, she teased. CJ was beginning to warm up to me, but I wasn't sure if I could fully trust her yet. Want me to drive you back? I asked. I've had more bourbon than usual. I'm sleepy. Besides, I'd rather not spend the night with my dad and his 3 human statues. They're probably in there drinking beer, belching, and letting one rip every few minutes. Not exactly a classy environment for a delicate soul like me, she said with a laugh. Do you have a guest room? I do. Can I stay here tonight? And maybe borrow a t-shirt to sleep in? Chapter 16. I woke early the next morning. CJ was still asleep in the guest bedroom. I made a pot of coffee, then got on the phone with Mickey and filled her in on what had happened. I explained who CJ was and that she matched the victim mentioned in the blue notebook. How sure are you? Mickey asked. Before bed, I had gone to the YCU TV station's website in Ayer, Pennsylvania. I dug through their archived news footage from 2010 and found a video report on CJ's accident. All the details matched. So, Mickey asked, what now? I know what I have to do, I replied. I'm with you, she said. Do what you've got to do. A little while later, CJ emerged from the guest room, hair tousled. I need coffee, she said. CJ sat down at the table, silently drinking 2 cups of coffee one after the other. So what's the next step? I asked. I'm thinking I'll head back to the house, pack my things, and leave for Erie tomorrow, she said. Whenever you're ready, I'll drive you back, I offered. While CJ got dressed, I checked the forecast and peered out the window to confirm the roads were dry. If the weather had turned or snow was falling, I would have had to call for a ride to Deadwood to retrieve my truck, or take the Corvette. Though I only drive that car when the pavement is bone dry and there's no chance of rain. Luckily, the skies were clear and the streets were clean. When CJ came out, I told her we'd take my car. She followed me into the garage. As soon as her eyes landed on the Corvette, she stopped in her tracks. "Why do you have that car?" she demanded. "It's the same one from the photo with Howard." "What's going on?" "Don't you remember that jerk told the dealer his name was Tom Mayfield?" I said. "It's registered in my name now." So I kept it. She stared at me, processing the information. "Okay, yeah, that makes sense now." I backed the Corvette out of the garage and asked her where exactly the house was. "You've already been there and you're asking me that?" she said, surprised. "I had a hood over my head on the way in," I explained. "And on the way out, I was squeezed in the back seat between Punch and Judy. I didn't see a thing." "It's in Sturgis," she said. Before we even left Deadwood, I had already made up my mind. There was some risk in the plan, but I was sure it was the right move. "Once you've got things wrapped up at the house, would you be willing to come back to Deadwood for lunch? There's something important I need to talk to you about." "What is it?" she asked. "You'll have to come back to find out," I replied. "I'll meet you at the hotel." It was 12:30 when CJ stepped into the hotel lobby. I greeted her and walked her across the street to Patty O'Neill's for lunch. Throughout the meal, she kept circling back to the same question, why I wanted to talk. "You'll know soon," I kept saying, "after lunch." Once we finished eating, I took her back to the hotel and led her up to my office on the second floor. CJ stood by quietly as I booted up my computer and switched on the 50-inch wall display. I opened a spreadsheet and projected it onto the big screen. "What is this?" CJ asked. "A spreadsheet," I said. "I can see that," she replied, slightly irritated. "What are you showing me?" "It's the financial breakdown for the Deadwood Hotel, the casino, and the Mayfield 1870 Saloon," I explained. "Purchase price, $2 million. I pointed out the rest. $350,000 came as a down payment from Mayfield Enterprises, and another $1 million was covered through a business loan from a Rapid City bank. I showed her the closing costs, fees, commissions, taxes, everything itemized. "I'm a tax preparer," she said dryly. "I know how to read a spreadsheet." "Got it," I said. "Here's the next one." I brought up another spreadsheet. This time, the books for Mayfield Enterprises. "I assume you can follow this too." On this document, I indicated where the initial capital came from. Back in March 2012, Mickey and the guy you knew as Howard, or David Nesbitt, as I know him, set up Mayfield Enterprises. Instead of investing in mineral rights in North Carolina like I was told, Mickey used our $500,000 to fund the company. That guy matched it with another $500,000. I went on. The rest, $890,000, was the result of a merger with Nesco LLC, a company Mickey's friend Nesbitt had set up. Nesco held $400,000 in cash and a house that belonged to that bastard. We sold the house after the merger for another $490,000. CJ was glued to the screen, absorbing every detail. "Why are you telling me all of this?" she asked finally. "Because you're standing at a crossroads," I said. "You haven't put it together yet, but the guy who screwed you, Howard or Nesbitt, dumped nearly $2 million into this company. That includes the $500,000 he stole from you." CJ brought her hand to her mouth. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I have two proposals for you," I said. "First option, we find a way to get your $500,000 back, but we can't just cut you a check. The IRS would come knocking and you'd be on the hook for taxes. Instead, Mickey's offering to buy a $500,000 annuity in your name. It would pay you about $2,000 a month for over 20 years, and with interest, you'd end up with more than you lost. We're open to other ideas too. If you've got a different suggestion, we'll listen." "And the second option?" she asked. "Leave your money in Mayfield Enterprises. Become a full partner, equal to me and Mickey. Take over as our CFO and manage the accounting for everything we do. You'd draw a salary, get benefits, and earn bonuses tied to the company's performance. "What about my job?" she asked. "I still teach. You could keep doing that and handle our books remotely when it suits you. Or you could move here and take on a bigger role. Personally, I hope you'll choose the second option." "I thought your ex-wife was the CFO," CJ said. "I'm planning to list Mickey as vice president. She'll be in charge of scouting new investments and exploring fresh business opportunities," I explained. "That's a lot to digest," CJ responded. "How quickly do you need my decision?" "I can give you a couple of weeks," I told her. "If you decide not to join as a partner, I'll need to start looking for someone to take over the accounting role." "My head's spinning," she admitted, "but this is the best I've felt since the accident." "It's comforting to know I haven't lost everything. I'll seriously consider your offer and get back to you as soon as I can." CJ and her father stayed through the weekend. She didn't want to miss the grand opening of the Deadwood Hotel Casino and Mayfield's 1870 saloon. The launch was a hit. While the hotel saw a few guests, expected for a cold December in South Dakota, the casino buzzed with activity. I was tied up most of the day, but I managed to spot CJ enjoying the slot machines. The next morning, I caught sight of her father playing blackjack in the saloon. Later that day, CJ, her dad, and the 3 statues left for Erie. I spent the following days waiting, wondering if she'd call and say yes to the partnership, and hopefully return to Deadwood. By Friday, the silence had begun to wear on me. I was starting to believe she might opt for the annuity, stay in Erie, and never come back. That thought brought on a dull ache. I had come to care for her deeply and hoped there might be a future for us, but CJ never called. Instead, she appeared at my doorstep Saturday morning and said with a grin, "Your new partner is here and ready to work." Then she hugged me and kissed my cheek. For the next couple of months, CJ stayed in the spare room at my place. Then one evening she told me she had found an apartment she liked on the 2nd floor of one of the old buildings next to the Deadwood Hotel. "I wish you weren't moving out," I said. She wrapped an arm around me and asked, "Why do you want me to stay here?" I nearly confessed I was in love with her, but instead I said, "Because it feels amazing when you hug me like this." "If it feels that good," she said softly, "then maybe we should act on it." We had never even been on a proper date, so I hadn't expected that night to unfold the way it did. But the anticipation alone was enough to make my heart race. After that night, CJ never actually moved out. Though all her things remained in the spare room, she never spent another night there. Every night she came to bed with me. Chapter 17. About 2 months into our relationship, Mickey finally made the trip to Deadwood to meet CJ. Watching the two of them interact, it was clear they were feeling each other out. Eventually, Mickey was the one to break the tension. "You know, I think we've both fallen for 2 of the same guys. One good and one not so much." CJ laughed. "You've got that right." A little while later, I stepped outside to take a phone call. When I returned, CJ was putting on her coat. "Mickey and I are heading out for lunch." "I'll see you in a few hours," she said. I wasn't sure if that was a good or bad sign. When they returned, it was obvious they'd had a few drinks along with their meal. They were cheerful, animated, and acted like they'd been friends forever. Later in the afternoon, I had a quiet moment with Mickey, and she brought me up to speed. She said she'd been seeing someone, a doctor named Jimmy Hogan, who had a practice in Asheville. They'd been dating for a few months and even spent New Year's Eve at a house in the Cayman Islands. After filling me in on her personal life, she offered to bring CJ back to the room so we could shift gears and talk business, specifically Mayfield Enterprises. The next morning, the 3 of us met in my office at the hotel. While we were going over some plans, the receptionist called. "There's a man in the lobby who wants to speak with you," she said. "He wouldn't give his name or explain why he's here." "Send him up," I replied. The man who entered was short, bald, and had a solid build. He wore a light gray jacket and looked like he'd stepped out of a vintage cop drama. "My name's Leander Mossman," he said as he walked in. I stood, introduced myself, and then introduced him to CJ and Mickey. "So what can I do for you?" I asked. "I'm a private investigator from New Orleans," he said. "I'm trying to track down a man named Larry Taylor." "I'm afraid I don't know anyone by that name," I told him. Mossman extended a photograph toward me and asked, "Do you know who this is? His name's Larry Taylor." I passed the picture along to CJ, who then handed it to Mickey. The man in the photo appeared to be a younger version of Nesbitt. I don't believe I've met him before, I said, then turned to Mickey. What about you? Do you recognize him? I've never laid eyes on him, Mickey replied. CJ didn't say a word. Why are you looking for this guy around here? I asked. He took money from a few folks down in New Orleans some time ago, Mossman answered. They hired me to track him down. But what makes you think he's in this area? I pressed. He tricked my clients by claiming he was going to invest in a casino, Mossman explained. Said he planned to buy one here in Deadwood, then vanished with the cash. This was the only casino that changed hands in the past decade, so I came to see if he ended up as the new owner. This casino, along with the hotel and Mayfield's 1870 saloon, was bought by Mayfield Enterprises last May, Mickey stated firmly. Larry Taylor isn't involved in our business in any way. Then who owns Mayfield Enterprises? Mossman asked. We do, CJ replied, the three of us. You got a great place here, Mossman said, giving a glance around. We've poured in plenty of money, time, and hard work, I told him. Now it's finally starting to pay off. Well, it's been a long road, Mossman said with a sigh. Looks like this lead's no good either. How much did Taylor take your clients for? CJ asked. Roughly $700,000 altogether, he said. If your clients ever find him, I sure wouldn't want to be in his shoes, I remarked. Mossman thanked us for the information and made his way out. As he stepped out of my office, I brought a finger to my lips, silently signaling CJ and Mickey to keep quiet. Well, that was unexpected, I said. Let's hope we never end up suckered into something like that. Anyway, let's get back to business. None of us mentioned Mossman again until we were back inside the house. Do you think he bought our story? CJ asked. I think so, I said. He didn't seem suspicious. But just to be careful, we should leave the past where it belongs and never dig it up again. Chapter 18. From the time we opened last December, our property in Deadwood had outperformed anything we had predicted. Between April and the end of September, hotel occupancy hovered near 80%, and we were packed to capacity nearly every weekend. The casino had steady crowds day after day. Come October, things began to slow down a bit. I asked CJ if she'd be interested in taking a trip to the Cayman Islands. She didn't need convincing. Our first evening at the Grand Cayman House, I proposed. She said yes without hesitation, then showed her appreciation in her own intimate way. Every day we spent there, she made sure to remind me just how happy she was, and I had no complaints. We held our wedding ceremony at Deadwood's Town Hall, followed by a reception at the 1870 saloon. Mickey and her boyfriend were in attendance, along with a few close friends and several members of our hotel staff. Later that same year, Mickey tied the knot with her boyfriend in Las Vegas. CJ and I flew out to stand as witnesses. By June 2016, CJ and I had a baby girl, Brittany, who had just turned 1. We were also expecting our second child. Near the end of the month, I got a call from Greg Hadley, our head of security at the casino. He told me 2 unfamiliar men had been walking around, eyeing the place like they were assessing it. They snapped a few pictures and then wandered into the saloon. I told Greg to meet me there and headed down to check things out for myself. As we entered the saloon, Greg and I spotted the 2 men immediately. They were in suits, not exactly dressed for trouble, but were clearly photographing the room. I walked up and introduced myself. I'm Tom Mayfield, one of the owners here. Mind telling me what you're up to? One of them stepped forward. John Benson, he said, gesturing to his partner. This is Bill Martin, my assistant. We're scouting investment opportunities. Been in town all week, and this is the best location we've come across. You're not wrong, I said. This is prime property in Deadwood, but it's not on the market. You haven't heard what we're offering yet, Benson replied. All right, I'm listening, I said. We're thinking of putting $4 million on the table for the hotel, casino, and the saloon, he told me. The number caught me off guard, but I didn't let it show. That kind of property earns that much every couple of years, I said calmly. It's going to take a lot more than that to get us to even consider selling. So you are open to the idea of selling? He pressed. I didn't say that, I replied. What I said was that $4 million isn't even close to enough to make us consider a deal. Who exactly is interested in buying the place? The clients we represent prefer to remain unnamed, Benson said. We'll reach out in a few days. Maybe we can persuade you to reconsider." After Benson and Martin left, I turned to Greg. "Did you get the whole thing recorded?" "Every word," he confirmed. I couldn't tell whether they planned to return with a higher offer or had something else in mind to pressure us into selling. Back in my office, I called CJ in and then rang up Mickey. When they were both present, I played the recording Greg had made of my talk with Benson and Martin. "So," I asked them, "do you think this is a real offer? Or are they trying to pull something shady?" "You told them the property makes $2 million a year," Mickey said. "Do you think they actually bought that?" "Probably not," I admitted, "but it didn't seem to matter to them. They still want the place. I'm just not sure why. We need to be cautious." "What if they come back with a $5 million offer?" CJ asked. "Should we take it?" The room went quiet for a moment. Then Mickey spoke up. "If they make another offer, counter it. See how serious they are." "How much higher should we go on a counter?" I asked. Mickey chuckled. "Add $1 million to whatever they give us. If they accept, we take the money and get out of Deadwood." Sure enough, 2 days later, Benson and Martin returned with an offer of $5 million. "We won't let it go for less than 6, I told them. Benson didn't flinch. He simply said he needed to make a call and would get back to me. Less than 30 minutes later, they returned and agreed to the $6 million deal. No questions asked, no requests to see any financial statements. That's when I realized they weren't just buying a business. They wanted the Deadwood Hotel and Casino for reasons beyond revenue. I met with CJ and Mickey. We agreed to accept. It took about 2 months to finalize everything. Once the paperwork was complete and the property legally transferred to Benson or whoever he was fronting for, CJ, Brittany, and I loaded up our Toyota Highlander and headed east to Asheville, North Carolina. We'd already bought a home there. The furniture had been delivered a week earlier, along with the Corvette. Things between Mickey and me had been resolved. The tension was gone, which made it possible for her, CJ, and me to work as a team in growing Mayfield Enterprises. I even convinced them to let the company acquire 3 franchises of Standard Auto Services Corporation in Southern Virginia, not far from the North Carolina border. Our second child, a boy we named Thomas Mayfield Jr., was born in October. A few weeks later, Mickey revealed she was expecting again, due in April. And it was in April, just after Mickey gave birth to Ashley, her baby girl, that the next major turn in our story arrived. I was working in my home office when the call came in. The man introduced himself as Agent James Seymour from the IRS. My stomach sank. I tried to think of what might have triggered their interest. As far as I knew, our recent tax returns were in order. But if they decided to dig into Mayfield Enterprises' early years, specifically 2012 and 2013, they might start poking around about where the startup capital had come from. I invited Seymour over and called Mickey to fill her in. CJ was already home. Mickey showed up shortly before Seymour arrived. When I opened the door, Seymour flashed his badge. "Agent James Seymour, and you're Thomas Mayfield?" "I am," I said, and welcomed him inside. In the living room, I introduced him to CJ and Mickey and offered him a coffee, which he accepted. Once we were all seated, Seymour got down to business. "I'm here today to ask you a few questions about your sale of the Deadwood Hotel and Casino," he began, "specifically your deal with the Treadway Syndicate." "The Treadway Syndicate?" I repeated, surprised. "This is the first we've heard that name." We never knew who the actual buyers were. We only dealt with their representatives. They never disclosed who they were working for. "Were there any irregularities with the transaction?" I asked. "Not on your end," Seymour said, "but Treadway has a history of acquiring businesses in, let's say, curious ways. The Deadwood purchase stood out because of the price. $6 million for a business bringing in just under $1 million annually." He paused. "Treadway is known for overpaying." "So you think the price was inflated?" I asked. "Well, did you market the casino for sale, or did they approach you?" "They came to us out of the blue," I said. "We weren't even thinking about selling. They offered $4 million, we turned it down. They upped it to $5 million, and we countered at 6. They took the deal immediately." "You didn't think that was too generous?" Seymour asked. "Of course we did," I said. But 6 million is hard to walk away from. It gave us the chance to start something new. I hesitated, then added, I'll admit, I had my suspicions. Part of me wondered if they were laundering money through the casino, but I figured don't ask questions. Just take the money and move on. Have you had any dealings with anyone tied to Deadwood since the sale? He asked. No contact at all. So what exactly is going on here? I asked him. I'm not authorized to disclose any more details, Seymour said, but thank you for your cooperation. He handed me his business card and told me to get in touch if we heard anything from the hotel. After that, he thanked us for our cooperation and walked away. The IRS knows way more about Deadwood than we ever will, I said. I wonder if they looked into us when we first bought the place. I wouldn't doubt it, Mickey replied. Chapter 19. The final surprise in this whole saga landed in June. Mickey, her husband Jimmy, and Ashley had come by our place for a party. While we were enjoying a few drinks and good conversation, I heard my office phone start ringing. For a moment, I thought about letting it go to voicemail, but something told me to pick it up. I ended up staying on that call for over 30 minutes. When I finally came back outside, everyone looked up. CJ immediately asked, "What's going on?" I tried to keep a straight face, but I couldn't hold back. A grin slowly crept across my face as I said, "You're not going to believe what that call was about." "Don't just stand there with that look. Spill it," CJ urged. I took a breath and said, "It was the Deadwood police chief and the mayor. They just gave me a bombshell. They said Greg Hadley, still in charge of security at the Deadwood Hotel and Casino, showed up at the police station last night. Greg claimed he saw something sketchy happen behind the hotel. A box truck pulled up, workers hauled in a bunch of crates through the back entrance and moved them to the basement. Then they locked the crates in a secured room. Greg managed to sneak into that room later and popped one of the crates open. Inside, packaged drugs. He even brought a few samples to the police as evidence. After that, the chief got a search warrant and contacted the South Dakota State Police for backup. By early morning, a full team was ready to hit the hotel, 10 local cops and 20 state officers. By noon, they'd uncovered 10 pounds of heroin, laced with fentanyl and packed in plastic bags. Hotel and casino leadership were taken into custody, and every employee was questioned. The following day, the FBI and IRS launched a raid on the property. Apparently, they weren't thrilled that the local authorities had gotten there first. A joint investigation revealed that the Treadway Syndicate had been using the hotel to traffic drugs and laundering the profits through the casino. Using South Dakota's asset forfeiture laws, the local and state police seized the entire hotel and casino. Then the mayor called to ask us something unexpected. Would we be interested in buying the hotel and casino from the city and the state? They were offering the entire property for $2 million. CJ's eyes went wide. "Holy shit," she muttered, then quickly apologized. "How long do we have to decide?" Mickey asked. "They gave us a couple weeks," I said, "but the sooner the better. The feds are circling, and they might try to claim a piece which could drive the price up." "This scandal could actually work in our favor," CJ added. "Deadwood might get more attention now. We could raise the room rates and pull in more guests." "Sure, but I'm not looking to move there full-time," I replied. "We'd need trustworthy people to manage things, so we'd only need to check in once every few months." "So what do you think?" Mickey didn't hesitate. "I say we go for it." CJ nodded. "I'm in." Epilogue. March 2020. Since we took over the Deadwood Hotel and Casino, business has exploded. Combined, the hotel, casino, and saloon are now bringing in over $2 million per year. Our other ventures are holding strong too. The only cloud on the horizon is the growing COVID-19 outbreak. It's just beginning to spread across the U.S. There's no doubt Mayfield Enterprises will feel the financial effects, but CJ, Mickey, and I have enough reserves stashed in our Grand Cayman account to weather the storm. What really weighs on us is our employees. We're determined to keep everyone on the payroll for as long as possible. Sometimes I still can't believe how much my life has changed in just 7 years. And all of it, every twist and turn, started because of one cold-blooded grifter. A man so driven by greed he was willing to kill to steal money that wasn't his. Now he's dead, buried in a grave he unknowingly dug with his own ambition. And here I am, president and CEO of the very company he once created using my name. His Corvette is in my garage. We seized control of Nesco, the shell company he used to move money around. We also got his numbered Cayman Islands account, and his villa there too. And finally, we ended up owning the hotel and casino he so desperately wanted for himself. In the end, all his scheming led to nothing but his ruin. And if he hadn't disrupted my life, I never would have met CJ. His obsession with money made him blind. His downfall gave me everything. Now I'm wealthy, in love, and surrounded by a family I never imagined having.